The UN General Assembly is happening this week, the annual meeting in New York of all member states. World leaders, one by one, get on stage at the UN, give their speeches about what they think is important. And of course, less than a year after October 7th, after the biggest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, as you would expect, one by one, world leaders get on stage and basically say, how can we allow the Jews to keep attempting to defend themselves from a second Holocaust? Uh, this is basically not unexpected when you consider the fact that most countries in the UN are dictatorships who despise certainly their leaders and the people in government despise the very idea of a government that respects the rights of individuals. They are in power to oppress their own people and of course support others who would want to oppress their own people over over those who want any type of rights respecting government. But it is also those who you would expect to side with Israel that are, not exactly doing so. I mean, you'd expect them in the sense that they are relatively free countries, but you wouldn't expect it if you're following what they do. That includes, of course, Israel's supposedly greatest ally, the United States of America, who is hosting the UN, funding the UN, through and all its or much of its operations. So, yeah, today we're going to talk about what's going on in New York, what's going on in Lebanon, and how the world is reacting to it, and how this is being reported now that Israel is beginning to attempt to defend itself a little bit in Lebanon, as you would expect. That is very very much frowned upon by those who would like to see Israel kind of go into the sunset without defending itself. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Daniel, your thoughts on what's going on in the General Assembly?
I mean, what's going on is pretty much what you would expect to see when you make a group where you mostly put in dictatorships or a group that is basically based on the fact that dictatorships in a sense have same sort of I don't know what's the right word to call it, but sort of like same moral status as any country there is. If some guy in China decides to take over the nation and by force wins, well, now you get a seat. Now you get a seat in the nation. If if you have some civil war in Africa or wherever, and the stronger side or the more authoritarian nation wins, well, now you get a seat at the UN. That's basically what the UN is. So what you have, and because most of the countries in the world right now are unfree, what you get in the UN at the General Assembly is everyone can talk. Everyone gets a chance to speak, and they can speak about whatever they want, and they'll speak about what I think is important at the time. It's not based on any sort of any sort of standard. I mean, many people, there's terrible things happening currently. That you could talk about the Ukraine war. You could talk about the oppression of Uyghurs. You could talk about the general oppression of individuals all around the world when it comes to dictatorial and authoritarian nations. But no, that's not what's currently popular. What's popular right now and what gets you, honestly, what gets you also the votes, you have to remember all these people, most of these people are some sort of elected representatives. This is good. This provides them, that's this will provide them with good with good cred when it comes to their own population or people who vote for them. This is simply what's popular, and this is what is getting the applauses now. We can talk about the individuals who talk, but Let me get
Yeah,
kick it back to you.
let's talk about some of those individuals, in particular Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the State of Palestine, as they call themselves, and have I don't know what exactly their status in the UN is. I think they're
Well, it might be
observer.
upgraded to full member.
Yeah, and in any case, their president does get to speak. He uh, basically was urging leaders to make Israel stop the war. Again, let's remember Abbas is he's the leader of Fatah. He's the president, but Hamas is kind of running Gaza separately. But the things that are not separate is um, the Martyrs Fund, the what we call here Palestinian welfare, which is if you were involved in any act of terrorism against Israel, you get money for that. So the war that he is telling leaders to stop is the war that he is paying for with American and European money, basically the money of some of the better countries that are listening there and probably applauding him. An interesting thing about Abbas, a point of reference there, is that when people talk about the day after the war in Gaza, you'll often hear the suggestion that the Palestinian Authority take over the area, essentially make Mahmoud Abbas the president. I'm sure that's something that the U.S. Would be on board with. That's important to remember in the context of Chuck Schumer's speech in the Senate a few months ago, where he called for regime change, essentially in Israel, where he called for the removal or for Netanyahu to no longer be the leader. Remember, Netanyahu was elected a couple of years ago. He is serving the term he was elected for. Biden, the U.S. president, said that Schumer was right. So Biden wants officially wants Netanyahu removed from a role that he was elected for, and does not has not expressed the same view of the person paying for October 7th with Biden's money. I think that's a good point to start. Look, we're almost a third of the way into this show. We're not going to get through all the leaders, not even through all the despicable ones. I'm not sure there's a much of a difference there. But yeah, it's important to note this is while Israel is a villain in the UN General Assembly, Abbas is very much considered a hero, and where he's not considered a hero, it's because he hasn't done enough to work towards eliminating the state of Israel.
Yeah, so you mentioned the PA replacing Hamas in Gaza. So it sounds like, from what I've read, that there are supposed to be negotiations, I believe, in Egypt between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority about something like that. But I've seen conflicting reports on that, apparently the Palestinian Authority side doesn't believe anything's going to come out of it. So I don't know much about that specifically. So we'll see where that goes. But again, as you said, it's not like that would be any better in any way. And also, this would be imposing the Palestinian Authority on the Palestinians in the Gaza who don't like Palestinian Authority, because it's not radical enough, because it's not extremist enough. So again, just Palestinian Authority already was in Gaza, or after the Oslo, well, they disengaged. But basically, yeah, the Palestinian Authority was already in control in Gaza, but the Palestinians there decided, no, we want someone more radical. We are not really okay with you. So again,
It's not just there, by the way. The Palestinians in the West Bank voted for Hamas as well. It just their vote wasn't respected.
yeah, and oh, I remember you've mentioned something, and now I it completely ran out of my mind.
Well, then I will just follow up on that point and say that, yeah, when we hear about the need to respect Palestinian the right to self-determination, Hamas is the self-determination of the Palestinians. They don't have elections, but when you vote for somebody who wants who tells you that they will impose a theocracy, yeah, don't cry about not having elections for the next 20 years. Did you remember the point, or should I get to the super chats?
You can get the super chats.
All right, so thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says New York needs to be clean of the smell of UN. It's worse than the toilets at Penn Station. Well, you should try Moynihan Train Hall, the new part of Penn Station. That's nicer. I'm not sure about the toilets, but just generally, it's a much nicer part of that station. And yeah, look, that building will need to be disinfected, but it's it's a decent building and a good location. It will become prime real estate once it's cleared out. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, Alexis, for the super chat. Uh, Alexis says, please spare a positive thought for Javier Milei. Yeah, that speech was within what you can expect from a speech in the UN. Excellent. I mean, he starts by praising what the UN was supposed to be, which is I didn't agree with it, but it's not, if you say, okay, we're for world peace, great. I'm for world peace as well. Like that's if that's the UN's mission, that's as I've said in the past, it's the same as a beauty pageant contestant saying that she's for world peace. It actually a beauty pageant contestant does not cause the kind of damage that the UN caused, but yeah, him going there and basically, and he's been doing this elsewhere, going to places in the world and calling the corrupt people corrupt to their faces in many ways. So that was definitely a positive and definitely one of the things that we should hope we see more of, and maybe it's a start of something. Should we get to Erdogan?
No, because I wanted to mention. So
Yep.
you mentioned about not criticizing who Palestinians elect or sort of not criticizing them, and it makes sense. You have to remember when it comes to criticism, you can only do it to people who would accept it. So because Israel is a democratic nation, meaning they have elected officials, you can and they allow protests, for example, you can bring that example. You can say, well, you have people protesting in your nation. Shouldn't you step down as a leader when you have people standing up against you? And that's a fair point. That's something we want. That's something we accept. It's a corollary of free speech that basically you can also protest your government, you can petition your government, you can do that. And that is being used. The good that Israel has is being used against it. Because Israel has free elections, it should have them to replace the leaders we dislike. And since the Palestinians don't hold elections anymore, we just cannot criticize them. And that's always what happens. And again, that's what United Nations is, because the good nations are willing to go to the ICJ, because the good nations are willing to basically let be themselves be criticized. They are the only ones that are going to be criticized. When I was preparing for this, I watched a little bit of Gaddafi's speech when he spoke at the UN, and that's that's something really, I think, almost disgusting about this idea that we have this General Assembly. You, as a free nation, have to come there and you have to listen to like dictators telling you what you're doing wrong about, the world in general. And, when I looked up at the YouTube comments, it was all like, "Oh, he really spoke out against elites. Oh, he is the only one brave enough to stand up." And it's like, I don't think the Western nations realize how much like sanction are they giving to this dictatorship. Like you shouldn't. We have said this many times that we wouldn't debate many of the people because even just debating them gives them so much sanction that that sort of like should be accepted when it comes to the free discussion of thought. Whenever you want to have a discussion, there has to be some common ground, something you can both agree on, and you can move from there. But when one side wants to kill the other side, and the other side has to defend itself, and there should be some discussion, there should be some negotiations. There is no negotiation. There is nothing that can be done when you have this sort of like that much of a change when it comes to common ground. So yeah, the whole fact that these speeches are happening, and you have you, yeah, most of these most of the nations are not good nations to live in, are not nations we should like respect for coming there. And the fact that we have to listen to them because they are a member of the UN and sending others is just terrible.
Did you say that the comments on Gaddafi's speech was he spoke out against the elites?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because Bonnie mentioned in the chat he spoke out against the elites as code for hate the rich. Yeah, and it's you know it's also unintentional code when you say that about a Gaddafi speech for what we want is a dictatorship that doesn't allow the rich to exist, because that is essentially what Gaddafi was well off. The only rich in such places are the dictators. But yeah, nobody talks like that when they're against the kind of elite in politics, the those who are in a position of power, of unearned power, and abuse it. Speaking of which, here's an Al Jazeera headline for Erdogan's speech. Turkey's President Erdogan says UN and Western values are, quote, dying in Gaza. The Turkish president called on the UN General Assembly to take coercive measures against Israel. I mean, this is one of those things where you mentioned, the leaders have to come and listen to all these dictators, and Erdogan is at this point a dictator, even if he has elections. And first of all, they don't. They can walk out. As I'm sure you'll see when Netanyahu gives his speech, people will walk out, and then the media will report it as well. Look at these,
Yeah,
people taking a
but
stand.
but that's the expectation. You
Yeah.
as a free nation are supposed to sit there and let dictatorships lecture you about how to run how to run your country or how to look at the world.
Yeah, and when it gets to the point where Erdogan lectures people on Western values, again, the exact thing that Hamas and Hezbollah openly say that they are trying to, well, they want to kill all the Jews, but the Jews are the only real example of Western values in the Middle East. Yeah, there are skyscrapers in Dubai, great. There's also, women who go to report that they have been raped and they get arrested because they had premarital sex, and it doesn't matter that it wasn't consensual, not to mention homosexuality is illegal, and you can't actually speak out against your government. This is what these are Western values that do not exist in the Middle East except Israel. And Erdogan can sit there, can say that it can be looked at as just another normal speech or a brave speech of somebody standing up to Israel. Um,
Yeah, and
so,
what
yeah.
Western values is Erdogan like claiming? Does he like free elections? No, he's not a big fan. Secularism? No, not a big fan of that either. What Western values are he
I
claiming in that
I can
speech?
answer that. It's the more recent Western values of never fighting a war with the goal of winning, even when the enemy is clearly saying that they want to exterminate you, which is these are Western values post World War II, because World War II was fought with the intention of winning, and the result can be seen in today's Germany and Japan. All the wars since have been fought in a way that was not for winning. Whether or not they were justified, some were justified, some were not, but all were fought in the same way, and the results can be seen in North Korea, in Vietnam, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and wherever else the West attempted, and of course now in the Middle East. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says Israeli minister says new operation in Lebanon approved. Um, I'm skeptical always about statements when we don't see. I mean, something could be approved and not carried out. So as I've said in the past, I don't want to. There are things I don't want to know. I don't want them to tell me. I want to see the results. I'm very happy that nobody told me, hey, we're going to explode all of Hezbollah's pagers, because they would have all exploded, in a buried underground somewhere, um, or put on civilians maybe. So yeah, yeah, show me, and then we'll celebrate it here on the channel. I'm much more afraid of Israel going in the other direction. Daniel, maybe you want to talk about that a little bit. I'm sure we'll dedicate a whole episode to it or more than
So
one.
I'll just
But
mention it because people might see it in the news. There was this proposed ceasefire from Biden and President Macron of France. It was an immediate 21-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, it was stated. And there's a few comments, we might talk about it some other time. But the way it was sort of given and the way media afterwards reported it based on the way it was given is that already Israel and Hezbollah has agreed upon this ceasefire, which quickly, I think it was the foreign minister, because I think during that time when this report sort of started coming out, I think Netanyahu was in air. So Israel Katz, I believe the foreign minister for Israel, has said, yeah, Netanyahu haven't responded anything about this ceasefire. So yeah, it's a very weird, but we might talk about it some other time because I think we don't have much time, and I wanna talk about some other people.
they
But
have Wi-Fi on planes. British Airways charges 18 pounds. I don't know how much Netanyahu's prime
do you know
ministerial
what it's
private
called?
jet
Do you know
charges.
what it's called?
What?
I think it's something like a wing of Zion or something like that.
Yeah, it has some name, but it should have Wi-Fi as well. So I don't know what the problem is there. Okay, yeah, let's talk about a little bit more of
Okay,
what came out.
yeah, just quickly because I want to talk about this sort of like this whole episode, but the UN General Assembly itself sort of feels like Avengers because we've been because in a second I'll talk about Lula, the president of Brazil, and we've talked about all of these people when they recently got elected. So it's kind of interesting to now go to this episode and we mention all of this. So someone who has been watching us every day for a year or so will like now we talk about every single person. Do you don't want to talk?
Yes, sorry, I was muted and I was just confirming something because I was about to read this another Al Jazeera headline. Now this is less about speeches or not about speeches. Or is it about? Yeah, it is actually. Sorry. Okay. Israeli attacks against journalists, media freedom decried at UN UNSC. That's uh, Security Council, of course. So Maldives President Mohamed Muizu says attacks are meant to prevent the world from knowing what is happening in Gaza. Now, people know the Maldives as these nice islands that people go to for their honeymoon, and it looks really magical, and you can have this hut in the middle of the sea. But it also is not a very nice country, and I don't know what journalistic freedom they have there. But it's another one of those instances of Israel removed Al Jazeera temporarily, and remember Al Jazeera is a propaganda network of a dictatorship, and this is another dictatorship where there's the maximum penalty for homosexuality is 100 years in prison. Just a one data point about the Maldives. Maybe we'll do a whole episode about them if if we think it's worthy. But yeah, these are the countries again. These are the countries that are coming to New York. There's no place more symbolic of the amazing things achieved by Western civilization, by freedom, but political freedom, and these places that have the exact opposite policies towards their own citizens come to the West, speak in Western terms, preach the exact opposite of what they practice, and somehow get away with it because we let them.
Yeah,
No, PC, I have not been to the Maldives.
yeah, I hope global warming will get here soon and some sea rising levels. But it's always with the and I hate any sort of these like because someone in the chat mentions Maldives is like a big tourist destination, and I hate this dictatorship sort of destination that like have like just don't go to these specific areas, sort of like Egypt, Maldives, even Turkey right now. Like, yeah, when you go there if you go to like a capital, if you go to like a big city and you spend a few days there or a week, it's sort of like nice. But yeah, sort of like yeah, I just really dislike them. And again, it's this sort of like stolen concept, like yeah, like you mentioned about the journalistic freedom, and it's always it's almost like these presidents and these leaders of the nations are actual trolls, because when I'm trying to be a troll, that's what I do. I claim someone else is doing that what I'm doing, so he can call me out, and I get the engagement from him, and it's almost like that's what they are doing. Like they want just my reaction when they say stuff like that, because again, it's so unbelievable, like saying someone else is like oppressing news when you have like state-run media or something.
Thank you, Wes, for the super chat. A couple of just quickly, let's go through a couple of things here. Uh, there's the way the media reports it. So yeah, Al Jazeera is not a good example, but one of the things that came up, and this is not about the General Assembly as well, though it mentions Masoud Pezeshkian's address to the General Assembly. But this is a headline in the BBC, and it states Iran faces dilemma of restraint or revenge for attacks on ally Hezbollah. Now, eh, what do you expect? This is if you watch the General Assembly and if you watch speech after speech and you say, how can these people, how can these vile dictators get away with it? How is it not that the U.S., if the U.S. wants some sort of body, that's an international body that's goal is world peace. How is it not that they're all arrested as soon as they land in the U.S., arrested, tried, and never heard from again? Well, look at the media, look at academia, look at how extensive and how popular these views are, and I think that'll start answering the question. By the way, something else that Abbas said in his speech is that Israel must be stripped of its UN membership. Not something I would necessarily object to because you know, yeah, that's a good start. This is what I say Western countries should do. Israel, the US, any other country that wants to have a like an international body of free nations, they should start by leaving the United Nations. I think it would be better if the United Nations started kicking people out. No, this is only about Israel. They're not going to kick the U.S. out anytime soon because they're happy to take the U.S.'s money and use it to shit on the U.S. and its allies. And yeah, but this might help some people realize a bit more what's going on. We've heard people like the Czech Republic. We've heard reason here and there. We've heard once again Milei's speech. So yeah, if the UN takes such measures, that would be ultimately a good thing. Just quickly, Best Monster asks, why haven't you guys talked about Cornel West? One scumbag at a time. We'll get to all of them. We have Guidon Levy on we don't have him on the reality show, but we're talking about him. Yeah, there are many people to go through. Parting thoughts, Daniel.
Someone in the chat says, Razi, just admit you're a Zionist.
I admit it. I don't know who said it, but I'm guessing it's a troll, so you don't want to, or it's a joke by somebody who's not a troll. Anyway, yeah. Other parting thoughts?
I mean, not really. Just yeah, this whole situation is crazy. And when you mentioned, I think fundamentally when it comes to especially U.S. funding the UN, I think some part of it, and I hope. Well, I'm struggling to see what is it. It's either that the U.S. is supposed to just accept that dictatorships can criticize you, or the US thinks that these dictatorships are right and what they are saying is correct, and they just cannot act on it, which would be the much worse part of that sanction of the victim, that basically you also believe what the other side is saying about you.
Thank you, PC, for the last minute super chat. PC says UK is dumb. It joined these courts. US and UK did not. US and Israel did not, you mean? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Then again, when it comes to votes in the UN, the UK is the abstainer in chief. But it does join these courts, and yeah, the day will come that the UK is tried for something. And look, yeah, okay, we're going to talk about these courts as well. I'm sure it's a good thing we have 12 shows a week. Sometimes I think it's not enough, but it's something. It's enough for us to talk about somebody who was on Piers Morgan's show for the second time in a row. The second time in a row that we're talking about a Piers Morgan guest. Yeah, Gidon Levy, your day has come. We have talked about talking about you for long enough. The reality show about Gidon Levy, Hamas's favorite Jew, starts in a couple of minutes. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you on the reality show.